Everybody is doing well. It is definitely a lovely day here in Durham, North Carolina. Was actually stepping outside and saw that it was definitely on the sunny side. And of course, I know a lot of folks are paying attention to the NBA finals and to other things that are going on in the world, including who might be running for president, who might not be running for president, and all along those lines, and definitely checking into various other things that are happening in the world. So we've always got amazing things that are going on. And of course, we're going to see what things are of interest that are happening. And we definitely are glad to be here to provide you with some insights as to what is happening as well. Definitely, we're hearing that folks are saying that should Biden be elected, he would serve all 8 years. So that is what folks are saying. And of course, I know that even Donald Trump has come out very heavily against him and said that he doesn't know why he's running based on some of the things that are going on in the world. And apparently, China is getting involved in world politics once again. The Chinese Xi was talking with Ukraine's Zelensky by phone. And apparently, that's their first contact since Russia's invasion. And Zelensky said it was a long and meaningful call with the Chinese president and Chinese leader. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regards as we see what kind of Chinese influence goes into that particular situation. I know a thing that Nick Palveda, one of our founders, oftentimes talks about is Republicans and the Medicaid and food stamps. Not so much the Republicans, but the Medicaid and food stamps, and of course some of the other social services that may be going bust very soon. And apparently, Republicans are using the debt ceiling bill to push work requirements for millions receiving Medicaid and food stamps. So I guess they're saying that if you get these things, you have to be finding some jobs or even having a job all along those lines. And we know that gun violence has been a very big issue these days, and Washington has become the 10th state to ban assault weapons sales. So the state of Washington just recently did that, and we'll see what kind of impacts that has as well. And if you're going to Yosemite, that's a very famous national park. Well, you might be out of luck for a while because apparently it's going to be closed for days due to flooding from melting snow. So that is something that is going on in the world. And the Montana House is voting on the discipline of transgender lawmakers. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news. And definitely we're going to see what goes on in that space. And you got to be careful when you go into other places because some of their rules are not the same as our rules. And apparently, if you're going to Singapore and you're in that cannabis space, you might not want to do that because apparently Singapore has executed a man for helping to buy 2 pounds of cannabis. And that is something that we saw as well. And then I know from the sports world, some folks are either excited or sad. I'll have to ask Lee how he feels about it since he's over there into the New York area, that Aaron Rodgers is coming over there to one of those New York franchises. So we're going to see if Lee is excited about that or not excited about that. And then the last thing that I'll bring up, and then I've got a special guest that'll be coming on before we get into some of our other discussions, is that the legendary Hella Belafonte passed away at 96. And of course, he was definitely very much involved, not just in entertainment, but also was a activist in a lot of ways also. So definitely that is something that is sad news to have to report and all in that kind of space. But like I said, I'm going to bring in my special guest, and I'm definitely glad to have him with me and all along those lines. And then we'll be talking about an event that they've got going on, and then we'll see what other things we're going to be bringing up as well. But I do have Reverend Nicholas Inman with me, and definitely I was glad to talk to Harlan and learn of the things that he is part of because you don't know there's a Reverend Inman, but sometimes back we had a a whole series where we were looking at the worst presidents, and we did a whole series, and it came down to a race between Biden and Trump. And at the conclusion of it, and this was in the early parts of what was going on, it might have even been before the election. I think it was after the election, but some people were surprised. But in pulling the rabbit out of the hat at the end, Biden was who won. Trump came in second place, and all along those lines. And we had whole panelists of folks that were making discussions about that. But I know that you have a big event in Missouri. It is part of the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival, and is the National First Ladies Day. And I didn't realize that we had that, but it is celebrated on the last Saturday of April every year to honor all the first ladies of the United States. And apparently there are some family members that are still around, still living, and descendants of many of these great presidents and everything. Matter of fact, I see that among the names is Mary Jean Eisenhower, who is the youngest granddaughter of President Dwight and Mamie Eisenhower. And apparently she's over there in Kansas. We've also got Massey McKinley, who is the paternal ancestor to William McKinley. And then we've got Patricia M. Taft, who is the great-granddaughter of the 27th president and the 10th Chief Justice of the United States. And Ulysses Grant Dietz, who is the great-great-grandson of Ulysses S. Grant and an accomplished writer. And apparently he's over there in the every year, apparently on April 27th, he gives a speech at Grant's tomb in New York City, and is also on the board of the U.S. Grant Presidential Library. And of course, we've got James Earl Carter, the fourth, who is the grandson of President Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, and definitely was born in 1977. And then we've got Jennifer Coolidge Harville, who is the great-granddaughter of President Calvin and Grace Coolidge. And then, of course, you are the one that has organized this entire lovely event and all in that space. And I do know that there's some other folks that have helped as well, including Dr. Andy Person and Andrew Ott, and also Jennifer Highfield. So if you could just tell us a little bit about this event, what's going on over there in Missouri, and how you got interested and involved in the whole notion of the First Ladies, because I do know that there are a lot of folks that have even thought about some First Ladies that they might want to run for president, but I don't think that they are interested in doing that. From every time I hear from Michelle and even some other folks that might have been pushed into that conversation, that don't seem to have any interest in going there, even though Hillary Clinton has run several times, and who knows, maybe she'll throw her hat in the ring again. But I was just wondering how you got involved, and if you can share a little bit about it, because I do think that too often, and we've talked about it on this network, we don't know enough of our history, and we definitely don't know enough of our First Lady history.
That is true. We are excited to host National First Ladies Day, the national kickoff here in Marshfield, Missouri, during the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival. And, I guess I've always been a history nerd, kind of fell in love with the history of the White House and the First Ladies as a young man. In 1991, then President George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara visited our town for the 4th of July parade. We have the oldest parade west of the Mississippi River. And so that drew the president that year as he was campaigning. And it was very exciting to see the president and first lady. And from that point forth, I really became interested in watching all the things that were happening from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and really fell in love with the first ladies. And so it really led to a national discussion at some point in conjunction with the Cherry Blossom Festival, as we began to preserve history and honor history, that we felt the first ladies were kind of left out. We had President's Day. Why not have First Ladies Day? So I started putting together the National Commission. And, there is a reason you haven't heard about First Ladies Day, is because this is the first national kickoff for the event. And we're hoping that it'll not only take place here, but will gain roots all over the country, and will be a grassroots effort for people to roll up their sleeves, go out into their community, and work to make America a better place, just as our First Ladies have worked to do.
Sounds good. Just out of curiosity, do you have any favorite First Ladies, whether they are having descendants that exist right now or not? Because I do know that there was a time that was actually something we were considering. Like I said, we had the Worst Presidents show, and we were thinking about doing a First Ladies edition of either the best or the worst or something like that. But I was just wondering if there was any favorites that you had.
Well, from the living first ladies, of course, Rosalind would make the list of first ladies that I greatly admire. I also greatly admired Barbara Bush. I think Eleanor Roosevelt was fascinating. There's Lady Bird Johnson, of course, was very instrumental with helping us and advising us when we planted our cherry blossom trees here in Marshfield, Missouri. So there have been many that could make that list, and all for different reasons. Many of them were not only strong supporters in the administration of their husbands, but also took on their own efforts. And, Rosalind Carter's a great example of that, advocating for mental health. And at an age when she could have put up her feet and decided to retire after devoting so many years to the country, really began to have a national conversation about the butterflies and the bees, the pollinating insects dying, and started the Rosalind Carter Butterfly Trail to help bring awareness to that. And so, there are many that could make that list of my favorite first ladies because they've been diverse and they've been great role models for many in the country.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And everything you mentioned, Roosevelt, and I know that Roosevelt was definitely involved even in some of the civil rights stuff, even way before the 60s and some of the civil rights activities, because it is my understanding that she was friends with Mr. Shepherd and some of the others that were founders of some of our historically Black colleges and universities. And I know that not everybody's aware of that, but she was definitely very much in that space and did a lot of work in the early days of the civil rights struggle, and was very much about unity of the people, like some of our other presidents have been trying to do lately, and all in that space. But I just
You're
wanted if you
right.
could.
And if you remember, when the DAR refused to allow Marian Anderson to perform
Right.
in their facility, it was Eleanor Roosevelt who really advocated and then helped put forth a concert that was so famous from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial with Marian Anderson, which was a big moment in civil rights.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Is there any first lady that you don't have as much respect for? I know you're trying to highlight the great ones, but are there any that you are not as big a fan of? I know that they all have different roles and different advocacy points, but I was wondering if there were any that you are not the biggest fan of.
Well, I think that's what's unique about First Ladies Day. It's a bipartisan day, and we celebrate the history that unites us and not that divides us. And so I think it's a good day to have, so we honor contributions by all of the First Ladies and hostesses. And I don't think I could really pinpoint one that would make that list, because I think they've all been remarkable women who've been called to an unelected and unpaid position. And I think that many in this country should pause to honor that.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything. A lot of people wonder because sometimes people are looking at the first ladies and they do oftentimes take up causes while they are in office, but a lot of times they are, like you said, not in a paid position. So, in the mind of the commission, what is the general duty of the first lady? Because a lot of people don't even have an idea. I mean, these folks are definitely supporting their husbands who have run for the highest office in the land and everything, but then they are there for 4, sometimes 8 years and everything. So, what do you see as the role of the first lady?
Well, our commission's never really defined what the role is, because each first lady's done something different, and they've each been handed different tasks in different moments in American history. So, I think being a supporter to the administration, and then using the platform of First Lady to go out and to endorse social causes and things, and to betterment the country, in betterment to the nation. I think those are all important things. Now, of course, there's a clear definition of what the role and the responsibility is as commander in chief. But we don't see that as first ladies. And some first ladies have been more involved than others. Even our bachelor president, James Buchanan, had a White House hostess, his niece, Harriet Lane, who didn't really go out and endorse a lot of causes, but was instrumental in helping serve in all the hosting capacities at the White House. So it's been different and it's varied over the years. And, the items that the first ladies had at her disposal has changed throughout history. Mary Jean Eisenhower, who you mentioned a while ago, who is one of the co-chairpersons of our commission, mentioned in a speech I heard just the other day, when Mamie Eisenhower was first lady, she had a staff of one in the East Wing. And she, answered all of her correspondence and had one lady who, of course, helped as social secretary. And now we see a staff in the East Wing that is pretty large. So, each first lady has had a different responsibility and a different task that's been handed to them. And I think it's evolved. Of course, there could be a day when we will see that we'll have a first man. And when that happens, it'll be interesting to see how he will adapt to that role and that position and what he will endorse. I think we often put the first ladies in a box and we assume their job is to plan Easter egg rolls and state dinners, but they're often behind the scene diplomats, helping many ways behind the scenes to help further many of the causes and many of the programs that are being endorsed by the administration. So it's hard to just say, here's a paragraph that defines the role of First Lady.
Are there any, because you're a historian, as I know, Patricia Taft, who's the great granddaughter of the 27th president and the 10th Chief Justice of the United States. But I was just wondering, are there any humorous stories that you have heard about the first ladies that you would like to share with our audience? Because I do know that sometimes there can be some humor that goes into those offices as well.
I'll tell you a funny story I heard firsthand, and it was from Barbara Bush while her son, of course, George W. Bush, was campaigning for president. And it was at a press event in a college in a nearby town here. And when questioned about did she have any advice for her daughter-in-law about the possibility of becoming first lady, she said, "Do I look stupid? I don't give any of my daughter-in-laws advice." And, I think sometimes we see the role of first lady or as president very seriously, and we forget that they often have a human side and a very much jovial side. And I think Barbara Bush was really good to display that quite frequently. And I thought that was kind of funny that she could have used that to pass on a lot of thoughts publicly through the press, but she didn't. She used it as a lighthearted moment, and I've always thought that was kind of a funny moment to observe.
No, it sounds like it. What is your thoughts and what is your observations been of the last three first ladies? I know a lot of people are interested in Jill Biden and the fact that she is an educator. Of course, that a lot of folks have read the books of uh, Michelle Obama and all in that space. And then, of course, even Donald Trump's wife has been very active as well in a lot of different causes. But I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the last three first ladies.
Well, as with each first lady, I think the last three have had great strengths, and I'm sure they've each had weaknesses of various kinds. And I think quite frequently we're quick to jump on the bandwagon to tear apart their actions. Again, there's no clear definition of what the job of first lady is, and we see that with Dr. Biden, who is clearly going outside of the East Wing, and she's working and she's doing things, setting a whole new model for what first lady in the role is, and showing that you can do that job and still be effective outside of the White House. So I think they've each brought great strengths to the White House. They each had different talents. They're different women, and they've each supported social causes that were near and dear to them, but were ones that really were part of the national conversation that needed to be discussed. We saw Mrs. Obama go out and really try to tackle some problems in different capacities. She really looked at the school lunch program and began to look at how we could change that. We have Mrs. Trump, who was really about bullying and tried to make a national platform about that. Dr. Biden's done many things. So I think they've been clearly different women who each embrace different things about the role. And I think that should be applauded.
Definitely should be applauded and everything. Were you mentioned being a history nerd and everything as
Yeah.
a child and everything. So how much do you think we are doing as a society in terms of teaching history and all in that space? And how would you like to see that changed, if you would like to see it changed? Or you think we're doing a good job of teaching civics and civic responsibility?
I do not think that we're doing a good job of teaching civics. I think that as a country, when you look at the global governments of the world and the history of the world, we're a young country, but yet we are probably the most relaxed in teaching the history of this nation. I was fortunate. I had great history teachers. They helped me fall in love with history, and I've always been thankful for that. Not everybody has that great experience in learning American history. But I think that we need to do a better job. And that's, I think, so special. One thing that's so special about First Ladies Day is we want to have a civics component to that. So leading up to First Ladies Day in classrooms around the nation, they can learn about these First Ladies, ones that have made the headlines and those who are not so known. So they can really learn a lot about the history that has shaped this country. And I think we get so caught up sometimes in political correctness and other things, we sometimes try to rewrite history. And my grandmother has a saying that I have often remembered: learn from others' mistakes because you'll never live long enough to make them all yourself. And I think that that's what history allows us to do. And we need to be better students of history, and we need to pass that on to the next generation so that we are building educated Americans about their country, their culture, and so that we do not repeat the mistakes of our past. Even if we don't like to talk about those mistakes, they're part of what have shaped the country. And I think that's really important, and I do think that we could do a better job.
Sounds great. Definitely agree with you on that and everything. One of the things I'm going to bring in some of my other panelists as well, but one of the questions I was going to ask you is you are also a reverend and all in that space. So how important has the faith walk been in your history education and also just in your life in general?
I think it's fascinating just to study the faith, especially of the founding fathers, to realize how much that played into decisions and actions into those early days of the founding of the nation and some of our key moments in American history, moments when we've been shaken to our core. It has often been that the nation will look to God to help deliver us through those things. And, as a minister, I notice those things. I think it's such a powerful moment. This is just one example. Before we swear in the President of the United States, one of the most powerful positions in the world, what do? We still bow our head to God as a collective body of lawmakers, of dignitaries, and that happens here in the United States of America. And I think that's important. God's blessed this country, and I think it's important we always remember that.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that and everything. How difficult was it to organize this event as we are coming out of the pandemic and all in that space? And how has that impacted even your own church growth and development? Because I imagine you're part of a church there in Missouri as well.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the pandemic has been very difficult, of course. And this is the 18th Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival, and National First Ladies Day. The kickoff is just one portion of the schedule that is going on for many days. In fact, it started yesterday. And so it is difficult because there are different fears from different speakers and different participants who are coming from different parts of the country. And it's not as bad now as it was maybe 2 years ago in planning the festival. It was very difficult. But yes, there's been great challenges, but we've overcome them. And I'm just excited we can all come together. It's so nice to be in a collective space with like-minded people and not just having to meet virtually, which we did the first year of the pandemic. The whole festival was held virtually. So it's had its challenges, but thankfully we're overcoming it.
Sounds great. I'll bring in Lee Newton Rhodes, who is one of our regulars and all in that.
Good morning.
Space.
Welcome.
And also Sasha Starr, and see if who else I've got. I've got Dan Worthington, who is over there in Utah, and Lee's over there in New York, and I've got Nick Palveda, one of the founders of this particular network, Pod TV, and all in that space. So Lee and the rest of the panels, I don't know if you have any questions for Reverend Inman, but definitely he's got a great event that is going on, the celebration of the First Ladies and all in that space. But you've heard me in the background, so do you have any thoughts about this event that is taking place this weekend over there in Missouri?
I just got one quick question. You just made a comment. Welcome to the show. We'll call a comment about like-minded individuals. Can you expound on that? What do you mean? Is there an agenda or a group think that this promotes?
Well, I think like-minded individuals. National First Ladies Day is a day to challenge us all to roll up our sleeves and go out into our community and work. It's a national holiday that doesn't call us to stay home or have a banking holiday. It's a day that we're challenged to go out and take on a cause in honor of the First Ladies. So when I say like-minded individuals, those who are anxious and excited to go out and to work in their community to help better the country and the place that they call home.
In other words, give back, and similar to what JFK said, what can we do for our country?
Exactly.
Very nice.
Yeah, makes sense. Any thoughts on this event, Nick or Dan? Like I said, we've been talking to Reverend Inman, but you've been listening in the background. So, any thoughts?
Just a question. How long has this National First Ladies Day been going on?
Well, we've been meeting for a couple of years. Last year, we had an announcement at the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival that this year would be the national kickoff. And we've been working with the national calendar folks, and they have acknowledged that the last Saturday in April will be National First Ladies Day each year. It was chosen because, of course, you probably know from history, George Washington became president on April the 30th. And so we wanted a day that was close to that special date. And we wanted a day when people would be off of work and they could go out into their communities. So this is really the first one. And we hope to see it become a national holiday, actually declared so. So our commission is working on that beyond just this year. And we hope that people across the country will observe the last Saturday in many different ways, whether it's their civic club, their community of faith, whatever it might be, that they'll go out and work.
And this is in Marshall, Missouri.
Marshfield.
Marshville. Where is Marshville, Missouri?
Well, it's about an hour from Branson, Missouri, if you've ever heard of Branson, or 30 minutes from Springfield, Missouri. We're kind of the center of the nation. And we thought that was an appropriate place so that it would start here and resonate all over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Are there any national holidays on the weekend? I think they're all during the week. Am I wrong?
That's a good question. I'm not for sure.
They're during the week, so government employees get an extra day off.
100%. And when they fall out on the weekends, they delay them or bring them up, like July 4th, what have you.
Yeah.
Is this
Well-
strictly first ladies from the presidency, or is it vice presidency also, or governors?
Well, that's a good question. We really are focusing on the national first ladies, but we have already had some interest from state first ladies in regards to this, and we are hoping to see participation from the second ladies. I think that would really be nice, but it
I
really,
don't want to put you on the spot, but the name is first ladies. If there should be a first man, would you change your name?
we've discussed that. And so when that day comes, I'm sure we'll have to reconvene and make a firm decision about that.
Sounds
Ahead of the ball.
Sounds interesting. They're trying to be ahead of the curve. You mentioned it being a national holiday and trying to make it a national holiday. What does that process involve, and what can folks do in other parts of the state in order to get involved? And we are a global network, so are there any efforts to make this an international holiday, since there are relatives or wives of leaders all over the world and everything? So is there any movement to make it an international holiday?
Actually, our commission, we've only, of course, discussed a national First Ladies Day here in America, but it certainly would be nice to see other countries take up a cause of their own. And so to answer your question, we're really trying to shake the bushes, work, each one of us on the National Commission live in different parts of the country. So we're each trying to communicate with our own lawmakers to try to help further that cause. And so, we don't know if it'll happen by a bill that will be passed or if it'll be done by executive order, but we're all trying to shake the bushes as much as we can. So I would encourage those that are listening, if they're interested, to do the same, to contact their lawmakers, support this cause. As I mentioned, we have President's Day. Why not honor the First Ladies? They've made great contributions. It's not a day that's going to cost us a day off of work, and it's a day of benefit to the whole country as we go out and work.
What else is
Without mentioning names, is there any first ladies who refuse to work with you?
We've not had anybody refuse to work with us.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
I think they're all excited because it's a unique sorority. They kind of understand the pressures. They may not always agree, but when it comes to the end of the day, I think they all have a great respect for the women who've been there before them, and they understand that they should be honored, and they're often overlooked.
Hillary Clinton obviously is part of it, is she not?
We have invited each of the living First Ladies to be part of First Ladies Day, and we've been excited to have responses from most of them. We've not heard back from everybody yet, but we do feel confident that they will all participate in some form or fashion.
I think they should.
Yeah,
I think they should too as well. What else is involved in the?
Let me add to that real quick. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting to the right person in their office to know the right communication is being delivered.
Yeah. What is the what else is being involved in the Cherry Blossom Festival? Because you said it is part of the Cherry Blossom Festival, and I do know that that is a big event there in Missouri and in other parts as well. But what else is going on with the Cherry Blossom Festival, and what could folks be expecting this weekend with that event?
It's hard to describe the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival, but I like to say it's like you put history in a blender and it blows up for 3 days, because American history encompasses many things. So we have panels of World War II veterans, panels of presidential descendants, panels of classic television
Yeah,
stars,
I'm in a meeting.
which is, of course,
It's
part of our culture.
Peacock.
So we have many panels incorporating many things, and our festival focuses not only on the preservation of American history, but Missouri state history and our local history. So just like last night, we had a square dance, which is a big part of the culture of the Ozarks. So we have many events throughout several days that are great ways to see history come to life and hear from history from primary sources. One of our guests this year is Louis Graziano, who is 100 years old and is the last living witness to the German surrender of World War II. So it's fascinating to hear those stories, firsthand accounts of key moments in American history. And I think that's why the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival is so special.
I do have to ask you one question. I know it's not quite First Ladies, but you said that you all also do stuff with classic television. We've actually aired some classic television here as well. So I was just wondering, what is some of your favorite classic television? I mentioned that the legendary Harry Belafonte just passed yesterday, and all in that space. But what are some of your favorite classic television, and who are some of the ways that that even plays into the American fabric? Because I was a fan of Happy Days and a fan of All in the Family. I was actually even watching early this morning a rerun of Sanford and Son. So I definitely am a fan of some of that classic television. But I was just wondering, what was some of your classic television favorite moments, and whether there were any classic television stars that you've had the pleasure of meeting during that Cherry Blossom Festival?
Sure. Well, one of my jobs is I'm the executive director at the Laura Ingalls Wilder Home and Museum in Mansfield, Missouri, where Mrs. Wilder wrote all of her Little House books. So, of course, my first answer would have to be Little House on the Prairie. But I love the Waltons. I love the Andy Griffith Show. You mentioned Happy Days, all great shows. And this year at the festival, we'll have the Waltons represented. Michael Leonard, who was Olivia Walton, will be here. Cammie Cotler, who played Elizabeth on the Waltons. Numerous Little House cast members, from Nellie Olson to Miss Beadle to Baby Grace. There's a whole to Sarah Carter. There's a whole range of cast members being represented. We have had cast members of the Andy Griffith Show. Margaret Carey, who was Disney's model for Tinkerbell, made a couple appearances on the Andy Griffith Show. She will be here this year. One of my favorite classic television stars who attended the early days of the Cherry Blossom Festival was Betty Lynn, who many will remember as Thelma Lou from the Andy Griffith Show. She was also a native Missourian, and she was one of my favorite guests that we have had. But we'll have Jerry Mathers this year from Leave It to Beaver, John Provost from Lassie, Lauren Chafin, who will be here. And there's just so many different classic television stars that have been so special. And then we get into classic movies. You know, we will have Carolyn Grimes, who played Jimmy Stewart's little girl Zuzu in It's a Wonderful Life, who made famous the saying, you know, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. You know, classic moments of television and from the film world that our visitors just enjoy. And I learned early on, not everybody had a great learning experience with American history. Some teachers got so caught up in memorizing dates and names it bored some people. But when you added classic television stars to that mix, people would come to see somebody that they'd grown up with and they loved to watch on television. And then they would stay for the rest of it. And they would say to me quite frequently, well, that was fascinating. I don't remember history being so interesting. Mm-hmm. So the classic television stars have been a key help in bringing people to the table to learn the history of our country. And I think that's special.
It definitely sounds like it's very special and everything. Actually, Lee had mentioned the notion of a first man being in there as well. Is there going to be any push to get the first children involved as well? Or is that something y'all have talked about? Because there are quite a few of those that are still living and still doing activism work, whether that is Amy Carter, whether that is the Obamas, whether that is Barron Trump, whether that is a number of others that are still out there that are still very active, that grew up in the White House, being raised by both the president and the first lady. So is there any push to get any of those involved?
Yes. In fact, we've reached out to several of the first children. Julie Nixon Eisenhower could not be here for the kickoff event, but was very excited about it. Susan Ford has been excited about it. So, yes. And of course, Chip Carter, his son James, serves on the National Commission. So, we've had great connections to the first children. They're excited and they want to help in different ways, in different capacities, of course, supporting their first lady in different parts of the country. So we've been really excited to have those conversations with them because who knew those first ladies better than their children?
You can get them on Pod TV. Michael Learned had actually been on our show, actually Mark Lee's show. So you can say hello to her.
Yes, we will.
On the Pod TV network. Yeah. But you can actually get them on our network as long as they have a computer and a cell phone. Well, at least one of our shows. You got to talk to Mark. He knows all the different. We have like 100
They'd
shows.
make great guests.
Pardon?
They'd make great guests.
Yeah, I think they would. You got some very interesting people like Jerry Mathers is still around, and he was very famous on the Beavers a long time ago. And the Waltons, Michael Learned was very famous. That used to be a show people watched all the time. So you got a lot of the classic people that are showing up. They're all going to Marshall, Missouri for the
Marshfield, Missouri. Yes, I'll be here in Marshall.
Are you serious?
Yep.
They'll be right there in Marshall, right in the heartland and all in that space. What is one of your, and then we're going to switch to some of the other things going on in the world, and you're definitely welcome to stick around, Reverend Inman, but what is one of your favorite historical moments personally that you have enjoyed reading about? Because you did mention being a history nerd, so not just the first ladies, but is there certain historical moments that really resonate with you? Because I know some people will think about the Kennedy speech, which kind of alluded to, "Ask not what you can do for your country," and all in those lines. And there are some other ones as well. But what are some of your favorite historical moments?
Well, I think to have been alive at that time, especially in the speech that you just referenced, to have been able to watch that firsthand would have been miraculous. And my grandmother speaks about how exciting it was to be gathered as a family and watch when man landed on the moon. That would have been a neat moment to witness. I wish often that I'm only 41. I wish that I had many more years on me sometimes to have witnessed those key moments. Fascinating enough to read about them or to hear firsthand accounts. And I think it's interesting to study World War II, to see how the country came together in ways that we have not always witnessed it in my lifetime. And so to be able to hear conversations with people of how they came together and they grew victory gardens and they worked together as a community to do rations and different things. I think the camaraderie amongst the nation is fascinating time. And I just think those are interesting moments in American history.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, one of the things that I know we've talked about on this show and other people have talked about as well is the divisive nature that the society has now and everything. So is it your hope that this event will alleviate some of that? And how are you thinking that this event could be a factor in alleviating some of the divisiveness? And what are your own thoughts around that? Because that is something that a lot of people are thinking about, whether it is on racial lines, whether it's on ethnic lines, on economic lines, or a number of other lines that are out there.
Well, certainly. And I think not just with the First Ladies event, which, as I mentioned, is bipartisan for that very reason, but the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival as a whole. And as I stated earlier, one of our big mantras or missions is to celebrate the history that unites us and not that divides us. Many of these presidential relatives are still very active in the parties of their particular presidential descendant. And it's been interesting on political, especially presidential election years, as those individuals have gone out to campaign, to then bring them all here. There's been some exciting conversations behind the scenes over the years. And so I always stress before they come that we leave that at home and we celebrate America, because there are conversations that can get heated, but we've had powerful healing moments of American history. Jim LaVale, who was handcuffed to Oswald when he was shot, you probably know him as the man wearing the big white Stetson that kind of pulls away in the picture, was a Pearl Harbor survivor. And to watch him embrace Shigeko Sasomori, who was a Hiroshima survivor, I thought was a powerful moment to witness. Both individuals who were greatly impacted by the bombing of Pearl Harbor. But to have that moment, to watch Dred Scott's family sit down at a table with descendants of Jefferson Davis and have conversations about reconciliation, those are big moments. To watch Martin Luther King's family join that conversation, or to see Thomas Jefferson's family set together, both the Hemmings side and the Jefferson side come together and have conversations about their families. Those are moments that we don't get to witness all over the country. And I think that's powerful here. And we need to see more of that, not just in Marshfield, but all over the nation. And I think that's why it's important that we gather here every year, is to lay those differences aside and celebrate the uniqueness of this country.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just one quick question. Why aren't we seeing that from our leaders just as examples in Washington, sitting down with other people, even those you 100% disagree with?
That's a good question. And I wish I had just a patent answer to that we could just have a recipe of a solution. When you study history, when we saw people work together in Congress, they didn't always get along, but at the end of the day, they were friends, and they still went out for dinner. Or
I'm not saying you even have to be friends, but just speak to somebody and hear where they're coming from.
Right, and it's hard. When you watch and you study the relationships amongst the American presidents, some of those who were great, bitter political rivals later became really good friends. Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, George Bush and Bill Clinton, people like that.
Barack Obama to Donald Trump. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, that hasn't happened yet. But to watch
it won't happen.
Yeah, to watch Michelle Obama and George W. Bush become friends, or Barbara Bush, really embraced Bill Clinton as another son. We could use a lot more moments of those in American history, and I wish
they're probably related.
Yeah, I wish we had more moments of that in recent history.
No, I definitely agree with you and everything. Like I said, definitely want to get to some of the other things that were going on in the world. So I'm going to pivot the conversation. You're definitely welcome to stick around, Reverend Inman. Sasha, I had mentioned at the beginning the fact that G has had a conversation with Zelensky. So is this going to help end that war over there, if there is going to be action from the Chinese? Because definitely they had, apparently even Zelensky said it was a very positive call. But I was just wondering, as one that has covered that war very actively and has definitely got some ties, being born in Ukraine and having served in the Russian army, and definitely being one that is trying to hope that war ends sooner versus later and everything. But I was just wondering your thoughts as to this latest activity.
Thank you, Mark. In my opinion, Chinese, what they're doing is nothing but noise. Essentially, they're trying to prop up Putin because this is enormously important figure for Chinese regime, Chinese economy, and they are masterminding going into a parallel world order. In parallel to US-led world order. They want to have and prop up their own currency. So it's not a friendly gesture to the West by any means. The Ukrainian order of the day is very simple. They have to free their territory from Russian invaders. In order to do that, they have to kill as many Russian invaders as possible, because once you will kill them, the territory will be yours just by default. So the great counterattack of Ukrainians is imminent. It's going to start anytime now, and all the rest, China or not China, is nothing but noise.
Yeah, interesting to see in that space and everything, but definitely we'll see what else is going on along those lines. Hey, Lee, you had talked about unity in that space and all along those lines, and I did see that McCarthy is trying to unite the House Republicans around the debt ceiling proposal, and apparently is I guess saying that if folks don't join this effort, that it could have some extreme consequences, and definitely is doing some things to unify his own party behind that. But I just wondering your thoughts as one that observes political things as to whether this debt ceiling proposal is going to have any merit, and also if this unity effort is going to work.
Unity may be important, but having principles and a spine is more important. What do you stand for? And just because the masses maybe want to do something because it's popular or because in politics, because it's easy, doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Every time we hit a debt limit, what do? They maybe put some strings attached to it and make some changes, but they raise it. They just keep bumping it up. So isn't it just a sham, a facade? Why do we have a debt limit to begin with if they're always going to raise it? Can you imagine your credit card company says, sir, your card got declined because you hit your limit. Well, just raise my limit. They'll laugh at you. Repeatedly, we keep doing it. Are we selling the country down the drain, the debt to our kids and grandkids? Is this in the country's best interest? Why don't we just cut spending, eliminate waste and fraud in those departments and agencies that do absolutely nothing for the good of the country? Or are the responsibility of the federal government? Get them out of it. Department of Education. There's no business the federal government's involved with that. It's not constitutional. Stop it already. Let the states handle it.
Well, speaking of the states handling things, apparently, and I know we've had conversations here before about gun violence and the rise of gun
all violence, not just gun violence, all violence.
All violence, but Washington has become the 10th state, as I mentioned earlier, to ban assault weapon sales and everything.
What's an assault weapon? The whole thing's a joke. No one can define it. How do you ban something you don't even know what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing an assault weapon is something that is rapid fire, but like I said, I don't know the definition in totally 100% either myself, but that is what my understanding is one of those rapid fire kinds of guns, whether that's...
You mean like a machine gun, automatic? Those are already illegal.
Huh?
Machine guns are already illegal. And if you're going to say the rifles that could be semi-automatic, that's no different than a handgun. We have this handguns are semi-automatic. Are we going to ban handguns? They're not going there, but not yet. But there's no difference between, except the barrel length, but between a handgun and a rifle. There's no difference. The vast majority of murders, anyways, are with handguns, not with rifles.
Yeah, I don't know the statistics. I have to get Chris or one of our other statisticians to figure that out, and of course, I can look it up and all.
They're available.
What did you say?
They're available.
Yeah, like I said, I'll definitely try to find them and look them up and all in that space. I had also mentioned that you have to be careful when you go to other countries, because one of the other news stories I brought up was apparently Singapore has executed a man for helping to buy 2 pounds of cannabis. And now a lot of folks would say that doesn't sound like a lot, but in that particular country, I guess they are heavy-handed in their enforcement and all in that space. So is this something that one of those cases where the U.S. or other people should be trying to intervene, or should we let countries do what they want to do based on their own rules and morals? Because there are some folks that might even be saying that we should be getting involved, just like we've been with some of the funding of the Ukrainians with Sudan. But I was wondering what folks' thoughts are about that and everything.
If it's not a human rights violation, why are we telling other countries what laws they can or cannot make?
Yeah, it's actually federally illegal to have cannabis and do all that right now, right? I mean, federally it's illegal here, but no one pays any attention because they're too busy smoking their doobies in their back room, right? So if a country has laws against it and enforces it, Americans should be bright enough to follow the law in the country from which they're visiting and not flaunt it. Otherwise, they get thrown in jail. Makes sense.
Dan, or even living in our own laws.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't understand why you would even go there and say, well, why should the United States support something that is illegal even here, right? And it's like, are you really supporting drug users? Is that your goal? Is support drug users?
Not supporting drug users at all, but there is a push in the country to have that particular drug legalized. And now whether that push is right or not right, that is an argument that I'm not willing to get into on this particular day.
Well, it sounded like you were very pro.
Don't be making assumptions, Dan.
I'm asking you. Yeah. I mean,
you get in trouble when you ask assumptions.
I'll ask the question: do you like to enjoy an occasional doobie yourself?
I have nothing. I don't smoke at all. I've never smoked a day in my life. You'll be glad to know.
You're a good man. You're a good man because that's.
Dan, what's a doobie? Dan, what's a doobie?
I would have to amplify one proposal.
You know what a doobie is, man.
I would recommend that
the Doobie Brothers. There's a band, were they not?
Yeah, they were a band.
Well, and they were.
Excuse me. Don't interrupt me. Thank you.
Sorry, Sasha.
Sasha, go ahead.
I would recommend that U.S. would publish a list of countries where it does not recommend American citizens to travel to, and where
They
the
do.
United States does not provide any services as help you out to get out of the country if you're arrested or something. If you want to go to Russia and say, oh, what a beautiful country, oh, fantastic, St. Petersburg and Moscow, you are on your own. If you will be arrested in that beautiful cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, or elsewhere, don't think that you will be exchanged for Russian spy or for anybody else. You'll be there for next 28 years. That's your business. You wanted to see beautiful palaces and domes and whatever else you want to see there. Go. You can go to Google Maps and you can see it all in a matter of 5.5 minutes. Oh, you want to travel there? You want to go there and be arrested and then exchange for Russian spies? No way. United States have to make it very clear. And you know what? Russia will stop arrest U.S. citizens because there will be no use to try to exchange them for spies or for anybody else in that matter.
Well, but that Griner gal actually did commit a crime. She actually did have illegal drugs on her. And that was just her own arrogance, right? It was foolish for her to do that, but she chose to do that. And as a result, a very dangerous Russian spy was released or traded for her freedom, which should have never, ever happened. She should have had to suffer the consequences of her own stupid decisions, right?
Right. And that Russian person, he was by far the biggest arms trader in the world. And there was even a movie made a while ago on that scenario.
Yeah, and so I mean, this was another stupid, brain-haired move by the Biden administration, similar to the one that the Obama administration did to free that traitor in Afghanistan, right?
Now, what are you thinking about this particular thing that he's doing right now? Some people would say that it's very, great move by Biden. Some people will argue that it's not. But apparently, they are going to be sending a nuclear submarines and a new pledge to protect South Korea from the leader of North Korea, and all in that space. So that is something that just recently came down, because they're definitely going to send those nuclear submarines into the Asian Pacific to protect that part of the world. So is that a good thing, Dan, or not a good thing?
Are they yellow? That's what I'm asking.
A yellow submarine? Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said, another
Sasha, just respond to Sasha. Sasha, I think it's a great idea, but they have to do it, and with no exceptions.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I
To
agree.
come back to your idea of the assault weapons, apparently the big one that they're talking about is AR-15s, but that's the one that is one that I guess the state of Washington was looking at, and that is like a semi-automatic, from my understanding. I don't have
Every handgun is a semi-automatic.
Say what?
Yeah, that's true.
Every handgun that's not a revolver is a semi-automatic. They all have clips.
Further to my point, I would like to address this. Let's say you live in a village, and you know that in a certain house there lives a guy who fights, who has weapons, and who is quite dangerous. Would you go to visit him and say, hello, how are you? I'd like to talk to you or something?
Is he law-abiding?
Who knows if he...
No, but hold on a second. I gotta get
his actions, say law-abiding. I mean, if he's not in prison, so maybe he's law-abiding. But
Sasha, how many butcher knives do you have?
Sorry?
How many butcher knives do you have? Butcher knives are very fatal. They could be used to assault people. Why are they any different?
Could be, yeah, could be.
Yeah, true.
What I'm saying is that you will not try to take your time and go to visit him, because there is certain danger in it. So you'd rather avoid it. And okay, you can.
It depends on the person. It depends on the person.
Well,
I know people whose houses I wouldn't go. They have baseball bats. They've used them.
no, but
yeah,
hold on a second, Sasha.
you have a choice to visit some people that you know and socialize with, and someone that you don't know, but you've heard that he's quite unfriendly, dangerous.
Then I wouldn't go, even if he has no guns.
You wouldn't go.
Sasha,
So same
Sasha,
thing
you
about
know-
going to Russia. You know very well that Russia is a dangerous place. Actually, all world is getting weaponized right now, and you Remember, I told many times that the ex-world champion, deceased Robert Fisher, he was traveling only to those countries that have U.S. military bases. If he goes and country does not have U.S. military base, he would not go for any money. He would not go to that country.
Probably a pretty smart decision.
No, but Sasha and Dan, and this is the question I've got to ask everybody, and I know we've all got a few more.
Yeah, Mark, I apologize. I have to jump today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
No, and this
Take care, Sasha and Dan.
Thanks.
All right. Well,
Take care.
and,
Bye now.
Sasha, the question, but as we get ready to wind down, what I was going to ask, and I wish that Reverend Inman had been here as well, is that have we gotten too much of the Wild Wild West kind of mentality? Because, you know, there have been several incidences, even here in the United States, where it's been, you know, shoot and ask questions later. I mean, the gentleman that literally shot at the kid that was knocking on the door at the wrong house, that's why he got shot, because the person was feeling threatened, and he literally shot through the house and all in that space. And there have been cases, including the cheerleaders that were there in Texas, where they mistakenly went to the wrong car, and the person felt threatened and shot them and everything. So are we getting to that point where we are, as a society, too quick to react and not going to ask questions and all in that space? And so Dan and
Quick Draw McGraw.
Yes. Are we becoming a quick draw McGraw society? That's what I'm asking, because I'm hearing a lot of incidents where people around the world are, you know, shoot first, ask questions later. It's become kind of the mentality.
People will start being more careful about which doors they knock on and which cars they go to.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But I mean, if the cars look similar, because that's what the case with the cheerleaders and everything. I think they were coming from cheerleading practice, and they're all in that space. And then the same thing happened with somebody I think that was in Texas. There was another incident in another part of the country that had happened. And there have definitely been folks that have knocked on the wrong doors as well. So I'm just trying to figure out I get it if you are in a war-torn area. Like, I don't think you're going to be asking a lot of questions if somebody knocks on your door in Ukraine, because there's probably a good possibility that it is a Russian soldier. I understand why you would be shooting them first and everything, but I was just wondering, what is your thoughts about the society in general, the world society? Are we becoming too fast to react?
Maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows? It'd be interesting to see whether that is a problem or not a problem. But if it is, then we've got to deal with that, and whether that is going to need to be a change in people's mentality and all along those lines. Who are we going to be talking about on Modern Investment later on? I know we're going to wind down, but I know you've got that show coming up at 1:00. So are there any things that we need to know about investment wise for that show that'll be coming up at the 1:00 hour?
Yeah, there are a few interesting topics. For example, you see, market is right now in very precarious stage, because nobody can figure out what's the next move of the Fed, whether the interest rates will keep rising or maybe they will take a stop. It's going to happen in May. So, however, the earnings are quite positive. Yesterday, Microsoft unveiled absolutely incredible earnings, and with that, some other high-tech stocks went much higher after the market closed yesterday, and there's a little follow-up still now. So who knows? Maybe market is climbing a wall of worry, and that's what's happening.
Sounds like it's going to be good news in the market. Now, are we concerned about rising prices? Because I do know that some folks were concerned that we were heading to an inflation in late spring and early summer. So do folks need to be concerned about that, Sasha? Or do you think that the market will balance out, as they like to say?
It's quite phenomenal for me, the rising prices. Actually, let's see if entrepreneur feels that he can get for his widgets more money than before, and he will raise prices, and market accepts it and pay higher prices. So he is now very happy making more money. He shows more revenue, more profits. The individuals who are buying their widgets perhaps cannot find similar widgets at lower prices, so maybe he's right. Or maybe they will find those widgets at cheaper prices, so they will stop buying from him, so that he will have to reduce prices. I think it's kind of a natural process. I I can't really see why politicians, governments, and so on trying to meddle in it. It's a natural process. If the prices will go higher and they become unsustainable, they will inevitably will go lower, and that's how the economy works. Now, what the politicians and so-called economists or so on, what they're trying to do. They're trying to correct the natural process. I'm not sure if it's the right policy or not.
Sounds good. Well, we're going to wrap up and going to head
Probably
on.
not.
We'll be back tomorrow. And all in that space, I know Sasha is a gambling man, so I might have to try to find out from him if he's got any bets on who's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft, since that's getting ready to come up, and whether he's got any picks on the Kentucky Derby. But he might be one of those that avoid sports betting, and if so, I don't blame him.
No, I do sport betting, and yesterday I did extremely well on Toronto Maple Leafs, who were losing to Tampa Bay 4-1. And they evened the score just a couple of minutes before the end of the game and won in overtime. That was absolutely colossal event. Although I must say, several years ago, it was a completely opposite way when Toronto Maple Leafs were leading Boston in last decisive games. They were leading 4-1, and Boston equalized, and they were taking goalie out. They equalized first goals and second goals and third, and they won in overtime. That was a devastating blow to Toronto Maple Leafs, but at least yesterday it got its revenge.
It sounds good, and I know that Carolina actually lost. They were up 3-1, lost in at Carolina when they should have closed it out. Now they got to go to New York, and who knows, they might be heading to a seventh game because New York is a difficult place to win. So, but who knows, hopefully they won't blow that 3-1 lead and wind up losing, but all things are possible. On that note, we're getting ready to get out of here, and we'll talk some more about world issues on tomorrow at the same time. Hope both of y'all have a great day, and I'll see Sasha at 1 o'clock.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.